What up, everybody? I'm Ben Ortiz. I'm from the Cornell University Hip Hop Collection. How you feeling? Good. All right.
I'm Prime Minister Pete Nice, one of the curators at the Hip Hop Museum in the Bronx. Jay Rawls, why don't you bring Pete Rock today? It's too early for him? I see this guy all over with Pete.
And my name is India Mallard. I am the inaugural archivist for the Fresh Bold So Deaf collection of women in hip hop with the Hip Hop Education Center. I'm also a MLIS student. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ayanna Muhammad. I am the chief curator at the National Hip Hop Museum in Washington, D.C., and a student at Howard University.
So tell us a little bit more about the founding of the collection and what is in the collection and how you use the archives. I specifically love how Cornell's hip-hop collection is being used. And so if you can do us the honors, Ben. Are you going to share something on screen? Hopefully it'll be on
They
screen.
sent a slide template,
Yeah.
and I followed it precisely.
Okay, let's see. Okay, here we go.
I got the right font and everything. Hey, it works. All right, so Cornell University Hip Hop Collection. My email address, feel free to reach out anytime, of course. Founded in 2007, 18 years ago, for all you math majors. And to put things in perspective, the freshmen coming in this fall were generally born that year. So we've been doing it for a quick minute. All right. We started collecting with a group of materials related to a book called Born in the Bronx, a visual record of the early days of hip hop, okay? The first group of materials that arrived was about 6,000, 7,000 things, flyers, vinyl records, different types of ephemera. And today, as the bullet says here, we're over 250,000 things. As a conservative estimate, I haven't counted it all, and we span a broad range of subjects within hip-hop. I think everybody in this room kind of understands hip-hop and how broad it actually is. Sometimes I'm talking to audiences who don't know much about it, so we get deep into that, you know? Our mission is generally to collect and make accessible the archival materials for researchers of any sort. Anybody of any background, organization, research subject is very much welcome to utilize our material and to reach out. You do not have to be affiliated with our university or any university. We have people from all over the globe reaching out with various projects, from elementary school kids to authors, documentary filmmakers, and so forth. We tend to have a collaborative approach. I know that sounds maybe a little buzzwordy, but it really is about collaboration for us, trying to make sure that everyone has a voice in how material is represented, how it's used, and so forth. So the types of materials that we have include photos, flyers, ephemera, manuscripts, books, and select audio-visual materials. Sometimes people mistakenly think that our goal is to collect every hip-hop record, every recorded, or something like that, or download every video from YouTube, things of that nature. That's not the case. Actually, audio-visual, I should say the visual video component is a lesser component because of the sorts of things that we do tend to specialize in. As I said, analog, paper-based, generally two-dimensional, and so forth. We do not collect clothing, sound equipment. That's more museum sort of material. And we do have ongoing digitization projects, which I can't actually bring any of the physical stuff out of the storage facilities, so I have digitized materials to show you on our website later on. We want to be a resource for other people with materials as well. It's about making sure that the material ends up in the right place, and the right place is, of course, a relative perspective for whoever owns and holds the material, right? And this is an example, a group of archives and collections, just this is not the exhaustive list, but it's a sampling for you so that you get a sense of the breadth of the collectors who have donated their materials to us, and so forth. I don't want to read everything. You can see what's up there, but at the risk of blabbering too much, I'm going to pass it on to Prime Minister P. Nice.
Thank you, Ben. And I have to give it up to Cornell because they were the first. Like, they were really trailblazing in terms of hip-hop archiving. And, you know, this whole collection was offered to, Columbia, NYU, and all these institutions that are right in the backyard of birthplace of hip-hop all passed on it. So this incredible collection ended up in Ithaca.
Ithaca, New York.
Which you got to put in the...
Where hip-hop
You got to invest
retires.
some time and some effort to get up there. But when you do get up there, it's been a great resource. Having been an artist before, when I got up there and discovered that my publicist, Bill Adler, that he had, Cornell had acquired his whole collection, which was insane. You know, all the memos from Russell Simmons, Leo Cohen, all this weird shit is there, so you could check out the letters from Professor Griff, from the whole controversy we had with Professor Griff at one point. So for the true researchers, Cornell is definitely the mecca of hip-hop scholarship, without a doubt. Now, Paradise Gray from the X-Clan had brought me into the Hip Hop Museum Project in the Bronx. He's the chief curator. I think it was over 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, he started with Rocky Bucano, and then Paradise brought me in about 8 years. So we had started putting together a collection for the museum dating back to that point, but the museum had a little bit of advantage because me and Paradise were pack rats, and we collected like everything from our own careers. Paradise was collecting flyers back like in 1979 when he was going to jams or he was sweeping Pete DJ Jones's floors in Pete's Lounge. So he would collect the flyers almost like you would collect the comic books. And one of the ones in particular that he picked out was a flyer that had kind of like an Iron Man character with a Furious 4 before they were even the Furious 5 in 1979. And, through his dedication, through the things that I had done, we basically had this backbone for the collection of the Hip Hop Museum. And, as we went on year to year without having a physical building, we kept compiling this collection. The family of Pete DJ Jones, one of the early important DJs, some consider a disco DJ, but he mentored Lovebug Starsky. He got Flash, some of his first cracks in the business. Pretty much his whole collection that, there was a storage locker where some things were lost, but his entire record collection, all the microphones that everyone from JJ the Disco King to Lovebug Starsky used, his, echo chamber, like lots of great material, one-of-a-kind items that really need to be seen in a place like a hip-hop museum. So I'm happy to be here, with these distinguished individuals, and the Hip Hop Museum is slated to be finished late 2026. That's what they tell me. I'm not in charge of that. You know what I'm saying? We're just collecting the stuff. But hopefully we'll get there at that point, and hopefully there can be a full-blown, brick and mortar museum just dedicated to hip hop history and scholarship. And pass it on to you, because I saw your...
I'm going to go ahead and...
Well, we're gonna show Ayanna's first.
Oh, there we go. All right. So again, I am Ayanna. I'm from the National Hip Hop Museum in Washington, D.C., and I'm the founding chief curator, which means that I've been with the organization since its inception. And I will say, coming into this role, I had to recognize that I needed to deflect my desire to be a subject matter expert and learn to become a student of the objects. And so it's been my work to allow our historians, Jaquan and RBI, to do a lot of that work of doing the background research. And for me, my job is to become curious about the objects and to ask questions that our historians do the research about. So every time we get an object, we'll sit it down, we'll ask a bunch of questions about it, and then we'll develop the story of that object from multiple perspectives. So I might, like we have one of Keith Cowboy's hats, right? So I will ask a bunch of questions about it, then we'll go out and we'll interview people, we'll get more information, we'll find out what is the common story from the 3 or 4 or 5 people, because as you all know, everyone will have their different version of the story, and then we'll create our story from that. So one of the objects that we have in our collection actually comes from Cornell to us, and this is the flyer that is the invitation to come to what ended up being the screening or the recording of the movie Wild Style, so the party at the end of the movie. And so with an object like this, I will ask, well, is this the original hand-drawn flyer? Is this a replica? Is this maybe a replica that was handed out to people in time, or is this a copy of a copy, right? And so those kind of questions determine where the value falls for those objects as we're getting them authenticated. This one actually came with the certificate of authenticity from Johann Kugelberg. So it's wonderful to have objects like this, and then we kind of go down that rabbit hole to figure out what else we want to collect around this object. And so starting with Wild Style, which we had an opportunity to bring everyone from the movie in, from the cast in, to interview them, and talk to them about the objects and about their experience. This led me to Beat Street, which we found this Beat Street board game, which the interesting thing about the board game is there are 4 breakdance crews that are battling against each other, and in order to break out of whatever blocks you hit, you have to physically breakdance the move that came up in order to get out of that block. So it's really interesting how those types of ideas come together. This actually is a part of our defunct technologies exhibit. So from the board game, we found an original laser disc of the movie. I have absolutely no idea how you would play this thing. I know, I do not know what machine, it's pretty huge. I have it here with you today. You would put this cartridge in to actually be able to play it, that it no longer exists anymore. But we also have a sealed copy of Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five's The Message album. And so if something like this is in our collection, then I will ask, can we get that red hat? Who has that boombox? Right? Do they still have the whole outfits, right? Does anybody in the picture, have any of these objects that we can place alongside the album? Maybe can we get the members to come back to this place and we take a new photo, right? All of those are kinds of questions that we ask when we have objects in our collection. For those of you all who are under 40, you may have never seen one of these in person, but this is an 8-track cassette. It only contains 4 songs. Thank you, Jay. It contains 4 songs. It has the original slipcover, it has the original stickers on it. Of course, I also can never hear the songs on this actual object because I do not have an 8-track tape player. And if I find someone who has them, I will gladly, I don't know if I'll play them. I would want to, but I probably would never put them actually through a machine. Just like this one. We have one of the audio cassettes of Mr. Magic's Rap Attack featuring Marley Marl. The date is on it. I would not let my tape rock because the tape might pop. Okay, there we go. And then one of the other objects that we have is this really huge KMD. It's like a double audio CD, which most of us also can no longer play CDs anywhere. But this is from our MF Doom collection. It's sealed. There's 18 songs on it. But if I were going through this object, I would maybe say, Pete, you were an executive producer on this album. Maybe tell me, right? And I would ask questions about the object itself and maybe find out what's at the top.
Well, that is
of it.
that's the way the CDs were sold back when us old people were, when CDs first came out. So that's
Yeah.
like what, 90, 92?
91.
So it's just the long box and the CD is right up, I think up at the top.
Okay.
And, you know, it's hard to find a sealed one because, you know, especially with a popular album. I mean, some of the bombs, you know, you might find those in the
Right.
dollar rack at some point. But yeah, no, that's great that you preserve that.
Absolutely.
A great album.
Yeah.
All right,
And so
recipes doing.
we have a lot of objects in our collection that come to us in various degrees of care. And so what my job is to do the science part of it. I need to make sure that each object is sealed in a way that it won't damage over time. They're all in different storage facilities that are either temperature controlled or controlled for humidity and things like that. We have the Fat Boys all-you-can-eat jacket with the spoons and forks on it. And so it came in, it came with, like, it has studs and it has metal on it on leather, right? So that causes a particular preservation problem because you have rust and things like that that are possible. Also, some of the studs were missing, so then we have to decide, do we repair it, like try to repair it so that when we present it, it's complete, or do we not, right? And just make sure that the object shows in the way that it is. This salt and pepper card has somebody's actual name and phone number written on the back of it, right? So then questions of just what happens with that ink on the paper, what kind of slip we need to have it in so that it doesn't bleed through, all those kind of things. So that's my job. It's not always the sexiest, but I'm a storyteller, so I really enjoy that part of it.
I will have to chime in that Ben, you know, being as Cornell is like the premier research major library, like when you have, you know, up and coming hip hop museums or hip hop archives, you know, they cannot be at the level of like when you have, I don't know, like Grandmaster Caz's photo album in the same area as like the Gettysburg Address, when Ben breaks out the Gettysburg Address.
It's on a different shelf. It's on a different shelf.
But it's crazy that they're in the same area.
Indeed, it is. But we loan things out as you heard. So I mean, there's a process, a lot of paperwork, but you know, exhibitions and temporary collections and things like that. Y'all got some stuff too. So.
I'm actually making a trip to Cornell in the next 2 weeks to try to look for some items that Cornell might possibly loan to the Hip Hop Museum. So, you know, it's good to work together and to share, you know, that history. And, you know, we've had a lot of artists, families, a lot of, in some cases, people who just found things. Rest in peace to my man DJ K. Slade, but I had the unfortunate job of having to go to his apartment after he passed, and Jared Whitaker, who was his manager with the estate, had made a decision to donate a lot of material to the Hip Hop Museum, and there was someone in there earlier, and there was like this just black trash bag that looked like it had a lot of, old mail, straight up garbage. And I said, you know what, let me just take a look through this bag to see if there's that. And sure enough, like the only surviving black book of Dez, when he was writing Dez at Style Wars time, was inside the garbage. So we were able to retrieve that out. So like you never know what you're gonna find and what you have to preserve.
Okay, we have one more presentation by India.
Hello, everybody. My name is India Mallard. I am the inaugural archivist of the Fresh Bold So Deaf collection of women in hip hop with the Hip Hop Education Center. I am currently a student at UMD, University of Maryland, College Park, and I'm studying I am working towards my master's in library and information science, and I've had the wonderful pleasure to work with the Fresh Bold So Deaf collection since August. So I've only been in here for a little bit, but it seems like it's been forever. It's been a long journey. So bear with me, because we are only scratching the surface of our collection, and we have a lot more processing to do, but we have good news that we're going to bring on a fellow with us to help us with the collection, so our team is expanding. Yay. Just a quick brief on me. I graduated with a BS in film studies at Bowie State University, and I also minored in hip hop and cultural studies there as well, with Professor MC Shyrock being one of my teachers and being one of the advisors of that minor. So I'm just super ecstatic to be my first archival collection to work with straight out of my undergrad. So yeah, but let's get into our origins. So the Fresh Bold So Deaf collection began as a feminist intervention project designed to amplify women and cultivate and inspire all girls of ages in that space, right? And so. Oh, I'm sorry. And so I was making sure that it's fine. Okay. It started in 2017, excuse me, at New York University by Martha Diaz. Why did that go out? Oh, no. It's okay. We'll go old school. It's fine. Oh, there we go. Okay. And the Hip Hop Association was basically oh no. Anyway, the Hip Hop Education Center was basically the genesis. The association was the genesis. And from there, a dynamic collective of women determined to share their stories in hip hop was rooted, and Martha's collection was born, and she began that collection by herself. I like to call Martha, she's like the male version of Mr. Schomburg, whom I look up to. You know, she's put everything, her all, into this collection for it to grow and cultivate, and, you know, that means a lot. So if it wasn't for her, this collection would not be birthed. So what's in our collection? We have this is still in counting. We have about 1,000 physical archival materials, 3,000 digital archival materials that is within our current database. And then we also house Martha's personal collection, and we'll get into what those things are composed of. We have a physical archive, which is essentially photographs, portraits, apparel, accessories, anything fashion related we have there pretty much. Handwritten lyrics, journals, which is all manuscripts. We have mixtapes, CDs, artwork, posters, flyers, programming, event materials, curriculum, a lot of curriculum from our educational events. We also have books, zines, publications, magazines, things such as Vibe, and any other sister magazines you could probably name at that point. We have dolls, which I'll show you some dolls that we have here. We have some Funko Pops with us, some salt and pepper Funko Pops, because you can't have one without the other. These are about, we have a few Funko Pops in our collection, but these are one of our pairs that we have. Excuse me. And then we have games, we have Oracle decks, we have anything that you can really think of. And then on our digital archive side, of course, we have high resolution scans of a lot of our objects, and that's currently undergoing digitization, in which we'll see more of, especially when we bring our new fellow on at the University of Massachusetts, which I'll talk about later. But we have an oral histories, interviews, things that we conduct with our research committee, because we are also actively building a timeline in conjunction with these physical archive that we're archiving right now. We also have virtual exhibitions, event footage. We just actually in April had our second symposium, which was amazing, at the Lincoln Center, and we obviously archive that footage and archive those photographs that come from that event as well. And we also have educational materials, like I said before, curriculum, ebooks, podcast panels, and digital program that we have done ourselves, some things with the Schomburg Center we've done, online webinars and whatnot. Now, there's some key pieces I wasn't physically able to bring in, but we do have one with us. This is Cindy Campbell's passes for school, and these are her weekly bus transit tickets that are super just amazing to have in our collection. Martha Diaz acquired these from the Christie's collection. Christie's auction, excuse me. The Christie's auction that went up, that was about the genesis of hip hop in the Bronx, and so it was part of Kool Herc's special collection, I believe, and she acquired these, and it's so nuanced because one of them also, that I didn't include in the slide, but it also holds like a pass about her being a part of one of the clubs in school, and it's just so nuanced to be like, oh, Cindy was this amazing student in school, and you could see that she was just an outspoken individual to begin with, and the fact that she birthed or helped birth hip hop, and you get to see a little bit of her life story in that way, it's beautiful. So I also have one of the first flyers that features MC Shyrock as well, and this is the physical version that I brought with me. And that's super important because it's MC Shyrock, and this collection, the Fresh, Bold, So Deaf collection, at one point she was part of our chair team, and she still is, but so to have a piece of her history within our collection as well is great, and hopefully we can expand to actually having a special collections on her as well. That would be cool. And then this was one of my favorites. I think the Girl Project, it basically aligns with what the genesis of our collection is about, empowering women and making sure women in hip hop stories are heard through all generations. And the Girls Project had a Bill of Rights that I think that is super telling and timeless. I mean, their basic rights: be yourself, speak your mind, dress how she wants. Like, these are at a time where our rights are being threatened as women. This is especially important to have in our archive and highlight as well. And then, of course, this is super crucial. This is the Ladies First, excuse me, thank you. Ladies First micro grant that was created for women in hip hop, and this is the first flyer for its grant, and this was in 2009, and this helped immensely with this archive in itself. Okay, so this is that. The biggest thing right now that you guys need to know is that the location of our archives, we have just, as of March 7th, we have just shipped our archives to UMass, and we are in partnership with the Irma McLaurin Black Feminist Archive, and our digital collection will be housed there. We're also transitioning into Media Valet, which I'm super excited about because I had a lot of experience with that. So I can't wait to work with Media Valet, and we are in the process of migrating all those materials. And once this is complete, we can really go forward with launching virtual exhibitions and oral history and digital storytelling materials. And like I said before, we have timeline, research, curriculum, and interactive programming. That's what we're looking forward to with our collection. And again, we're open for donations. We've been taking donations, and this is a really good time, especially if you want to tell your story. And there's a collection example of the recent donation that we received from the JSTOR collection. And these are posters, promo posters. So we have Eve Scorpion and Missy E So Detective, which are super cool. And that's pretty much it. I just like to keep these 5 things in mind when I'm archiving. Archiving is spiritual. Archiving is shadow work. Art keeps archives alive. And we are the archive. Community and culture are we. And as women who are often the traditional holders of culture, we are the keepers of culture. We pass down tradition, so it's super important to respect us in this space. So, and that's just a little bit about us. You can stay connected via the QR code.
Thank you, India. I'm sorry to be like hovering over, but of course I want to like open it up because, you know, the Cindy Campbell notes, right? She had a note from her teacher excusing her from class because she was the president of the entrepreneurial club. And that lets you know she was already masterminding how to make money. And so that party, that infamous party, August 11th, you know, in Sedgwick, is her baby. She masterminded. She was the one that came up with it. And so we can make those connections, right? The other thing I wanted to say is that now we really just donated this collection to the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, in March. And already there's a professor that's going to use our collection in the fall to teach a course on women in hip hop. So this is the kind of work that archives allow us to do, right? Allow us to research, allow us to do a deep dive into subjects so that we could understand our history, but also be able to teach it to our young people so that they can feel the pride and they can know where their legacy comes from. So, Pete, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just introducing myself, so I didn't really have, because me and Paradise are like the ghetto archivists, so Martha had to teach us the standards and practices of how to handle the material, even though we own a lot of this material. So I didn't get to show off a couple of things I had. So yeah, so when it's interesting that Martha brought up the Cindy Campbell material. Paradise and I are a bit obsessed with the origins of hip hop, and when Kool Herc's collection became available at Christie's, there was some incredible, artifacts that really told the full story about, how Kool Herc and Coke La Rock, who's a lot of times left out of the equation. Coke La Rock and Kool Herc were pretty much equal partners DJing. Coke La Rock was a DJ. And what we learned from this auction was Kool Herc's brother, Kenny, did not know that the auction was happening, and he had his whole own collection that we were able to work with him. And we have this this archival folder here, which pretty much, like this one folder here almost holds the majority of like the foundational documents of the history of hip hop. So when people mention that index card that everyone would throw up on August 11th, 1973, this right here is a, kind of debunks that, because this is a Kool Herc party from 1972 at a different address before he was at 1520 Sedgwick. This is another party at Sedgwick in October when Kool Herc was interviewed by Stephen Hager back in 1984, which was pretty much the earliest interview he ever did on his own personal history. He said that the party in question was his sister's birthday party. And his sister was born, Cindy was born, I think, in October. And, a back-to-school party would happen, probably not in the beginning of August. So through the Christie's auction, it was revealed by Cindy and Herc that that index card that had been posted on everyone's Instagram for 10 years was not real. I mean, it was kind of like a fantasy index card, and the first person who noted that was DJ Clark Kent, who was on the index card, but he didn't get down with Kool Herc till 1975. So when we look at these documents from the family, and this is also Kool Herc's first business card, which reveals that his father was his partner in this early DJ business, because his father worked with a lot of bands, did sound systems, so it was a father and son business right out of 1520 Sedgwick. So Kool Herc's father had a lot to do with, his own history. Kenny, his brother, he used to drive along. His father worked for an air conditioning company, I think, called Clark Air Conditioning, and they would go set up the system at all these different clubs like the Hevelo before, everyone, knew about all these parties that Kool Herc was doing. His dad was actually doing the grunt work, bringing the material. This is a flyer from the Hevelo Club. This is the club where Clark Kent gave Kool Herc the second copy of Apache, and this is where he really started to do the quote-unquote merry-go-round. So in 1973, at all these different house parties and community center parties that Kool Herc was doing, he was pretty much just playing records. Coke La Rock was just playing records. So these documents help reveal like what happened at the exact time. And when you show it to Coke La Rock, he'll say, wow, you're jogging my memory a little bit. And there's this famous story that Coke tells about how Herc, coming from Jamaica, wasn't up on all the fashion, and even Herc would admit that he dressed like a hick. So he would say, yo, I was the one who took Herc to A.J. Lester's to get all the fly gear. And sure enough, in a shoebox that Kenny had saved for 40-some-odd years is a 1975 receipt to Clive Campbell at A.J. Lester's in 1975. So when I showed that to Coke La Rock, he said, I told everyone I was telling the truth about that. So in many ways, these documents get to, solidify the oral histories that we're doing as well. And when Martha brought up the fact of Cindy, really having a business mind, it was also even more so Herc. This is the first business document in hip-hop history. This is one that Cindy and Herc sold in the auction. It's a contract that Herc signed in 1975 for this club called the Executive Playhouse. The Executive Playhouse was owned by 5 graduates of Dodge High School that went to work at automotive companies. I think they worked at Dodge, were executives, and they opened up this club. So Herc had to put up $575 to rent out the club up front, and I think they gave him the door and they gave him the bar, and it just shows you the first entrepreneurship, the fact that Kool Herc is taking this chance, putting up $500, $600, and the further proof is a pawn shop receipt where Herc actually put up his jewelry to come up with the money to pay for that. So you show like the birth of the business, the real business of hip hop, where people are coming out to clubs. So this is just a way that what we do and what archiving can do, and not to go on much longer, but there were other guys that have been left out of the mix, and one of those pioneers is Disco King Mario, who was born in the Soundview Bronxdale section as Davey D. He's from there. So we actually were able to get in touch with Mario's mom, and the family was from North Carolina. She still lived down in North Carolina, and she had an archive of these ultra-rare photographs of Mario in Rosedale Park, and it's 1978. You can see a young Jazzy J right next to him. Yeah, just incredible. It's like taking a walk back in time, almost like you're on the Twilight Zone when you see these photos. So when the museum opens, people will be able to see these, blown up on the wall, and, it really solidifies his history in hip hop. And the last of the big three is DJ Smokey, who most people don't know. Raise your hand if you heard of DJ Smokey.
Not you, David.
Very few of you. DJ Smokey was actually at the same time or a little bit before Kool Herc. Him and Herc went to this club called the Plaza Tunnel, which was on the Grand Concourse by Yankee Stadium. They saw this DJ named John Brown spin from like late 71 to early 73. This is where those two and Mario got the idea to become DJs, because they saw John Brown spin. Now, you'll see some of these documents from DJ Smokey, which date back to early 73, even 1972 as well. So it showed that these guys were giving house parties, they were giving parties in the park, and with Smokey it's great because there's also photographic evidence of his crew at this club called the Over the Dover Club in 1974. And the inscription that they wrote on this is, you tell me if this is hip hop. Just rock and don't stop, dance and don't quit. The music gonna be the shit, and it says it's the joint, and it's 1974. So Smokey was, and Smokey is still alive, so we were able to acquire this collection from DJ Smokey, which also had his military enlistment papers in 1978. That's why you don't know him. He left, but he's the first DJ to bring hip hop to the South, which is a whole nother story. So just
Thank you,
wanted to
Pete.
share that.
This is why the archives are important, right? I was in shock hearing about the flyer that was, a replica, or they just made that up. And we've been celebrating August 11th, like hip hop, born the birth of hip hop. And so with the archives, we learn about these unsung heroes. We can debate because now we have evidence. And we're seeing other things that we're not able to talk about right now. But, people, when they give notebooks and other items and they leave notes, they forget some of the things they write. So you have to be very careful what you donate. And of course, the academic space with scholars and, faculty, we like to preserve syllabi and, student work. So it's really important. So I know we only have a few minutes left, but questions, comments, how do you feel about the hip hop archives?
As always, thank you for all of the work that you're doing. It's important. I'm wondering, and these questions might juxtapose and fight against each other. The importance of having multiple archives at multiple institutions across the world, how the pros and the cons of that, and then getting down to universal truth. There's always these arguments that happen in hip hop about who was there, when did it start, and are we going to get to a point through some of this work to come up with some universal truths? And how do we solidify that? Or are we going to continue to have multiple truths?
There is no universal truth. There are many different truths because people have multiple narratives, memories. We're talking about faulty memories, finding a document that suggests something happened, but not actual evidence that a thing happened. We think, for example, the merry-go-round happened on that date, but there's no video record of that. You know what I mean? There's no audio record of that. So there's going to be, it's the work of historians, it's the work of scholars to come up with a truth, but a singular universal truth may not be the most constructive way to look at something as varied and broad as hip-hop culture. I appreciate the question very deeply, though, because I think that I struggle with this when I'm teaching lectures and things like that. And I tell people, you know, it's not even a foregone conclusion that there's 4 elements of hip-hop. Some people think there's more than that. Some people think there's less than that. For a long time, graffiti wasn't really accepted as part of hip-hop, for example, right? So it's about what narrative is something that you gravitate towards. And then with regard to multiple archives, if I understand correctly, you're asking if it's useful or a good thing to have multiple hip-hop archives in multiple physical locations, multiple institutions, and so forth.
So, I mean, I think, like, you have multiple museums that exist within a city or locale, right? And then you'll have a national museum that exists on one part of the country. And then you'll have a very city-centric museum that happens in another part of the country. So, I guess I'm trying to interrogate this idea of having multiple archives and how it can be a benefit and what potentially might be problematic about having multiple archives.
I can see something on that. I think one that
It is amazing that these institutions are popping up in different areas. I know the first time we went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin for their big hip hop week, like I was absolutely amazed that there was such a strong hip hop scholarship community in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right? And so the things that they are collecting there and the things that are important to hip-hop historians in Milwaukee will be different even from what they're collecting in Chicago, which will be completely different from what we have in DC and what we have in New York and what they're creating in the South. Right, what they're doing in Houston and in Atlanta. And I would love to see something pop up, and maybe it already is, and I just haven't been connected with them, like in Miami, right? In all of these areas where they have these rich, beautiful New Orleans, right? Hip hop communities that have their own cultural heritage and history, right? Those things need to be protected and preserved by people who understand that culture. And then we can create opportunities where we're sharing documents or we're sharing things in our own collections with each other so that we can tell full stories when we're telling those stories. I would love to do more connecting with other institutions and in the States and outside. South Africa has a beautiful institution that they've created for hip-hop in South Africa. And so those types of opportunities only exist for us in this work, as I'm sure we are all happy to have more people who are doing this work with us to share with.
Yep. Actually, the Museum of Graffiti is in Miami. And And actually, you're going to be developing one in Boston, Toki, aren't you? And so the goal for us, the Hip Hop Education Center, is to have a page where you can learn about all of these archives. We want to be that central hub to house this information so that we can make more connections and more collaborations. I know David D has a question.
Yeah, question and comment. One, I would say it's absolutely essential that we have multiple places where things are at. I'll give an example as somebody who collects a lot of things. I had an idea when I started putting things on websites. Something said to me, don't put everything on one site, have things over multiple sites. So you might go to a page and it be connected to a bulletin board, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, a building get paid and one of the sites collapsed. Thank God I had everything else on other sites. The person that owned the domain, hiphop.com, lost everything. And that just reinforced to make sure you have your crumbs everywhere. So that's real important. We're seeing that now play out with Donald Trump, like DEI, and we don't like black history and hip-hop history, and pulling all that stuff. And it may be important, you know. What if Cornell is like a Harvard or some other school? Well, Harvard didn't capitulate, but some schools have capitulated. Columbia is something, right? Maybe they go, well, we're going to close down our archives because we don't want to lose money. Now, all our culture is gone because it was in the hands of one institution. So I think we should have that. The other thing that I would add, we got to get out of the habit of saying who came first, second, and third in a Columbus type of way. These things exist simultaneously all around the country. There's an important New Orleans history. I'm out in the Bay. There's a very, very important history that was going on simultaneous to New York, where I'm from, right? And that history has its own, you know, mores. It has its own ins and outs. It has its own pioneers. It has its own narratives. These are things that we were always doing under different names. We had drums. We had oral traditions, we had dance cultures, just different names. Go-go is different than hip-hop, but it's the same shit at the end of the day. You see what I'm saying? And so I think when we look at it from that lens, there can be deeper appreciations for people who are left out. So we can look at Smokey and not feel like we look at Smokey at the expense of pushing out Kool Herc suddenly. Because usually in history, that's how we do it. Like, okay, we discovered this guy, so everybody else is done. No, they were all important. And I think there's room for us. And when we expand it and look at it geographically, then all those stories are important. The LA story is different than the Bay. Don't say West Coast and then point to LA, because there's a whole story that we have. And don't say West Coast and leave out Seattle, because they got a 45-year history. You see what I'm saying? And then don't say the U.S. when you got places like Japan and all those places that got 45 and almost 50-year histories them damn selves. And so I think we should take the opportunity to dig deep in all those different nuances. We should dig deep into different demographics, women, gays, black, white, all these different people who had some sort of contribution that just didn't happen overnight, because in 2025, people have been around for a very, very long time. And I think when we have those multiple type of narratives and stories, then it becomes a real beautiful thing for us to really uplift and appreciate, versus narrowing it down to like, what's the universal only way in which this should happen? We were always doing stuff. And I think we need to celebrate that diversity and uplift it all.
Mic drop. Okay, spoken like a true historian. All right, everybody, give it up for our wonderful panel. Yes. Okay.